Gurmagat Cahirlock and Gurmagat Ara, and thank you for coming in to discuss this really important new housing policy. I suppose in election 2020, voters went out to vote and the vast majority of them voted for change. They voted for change, I think, on a number of issues, but on one issue in particular they voted for change, and it was housing. You heard it, Minister, I heard it, members of my party, and members, I believe, in all parties in government heard it and understood the change that voters were demanding. They wanted a change from the failed housing policies of the previous decade, and I believe in housing for all, that's what we are going to deliver. The new government faced many challenges, and in terms of the immediate one of COVID and the objective of protecting lives and livelihoods, and it is recognised and credit is due to every frontline worker, but everybody in our state who basically worked together to defeat the pandemic. And thankfully we are coming out of the far side of that. Climate action is a huge challenge facing us, not just on our island, but globally. And again, government is committed to working on that. But today we're talking about housing. And in terms of housing, you have not wasted the last year. I want to commend you, Minister, because you were firefighting a decade of undersupply of housing. The legacy of the co-living and the market-led approach, which actually has shortchanged so many people, so many young people in particular, and the pressures on people to pay rent, to secure a home, the threat of homelessness, all of those threats you really understand, and you have not only brought forward a plan that will bring us over the next 4 years and the next decade, but also in the immediate started to address those concerns. You've mentioned already the protections and supports that you put in place for renters during the pandemic. They were vital and essential. There was others who would criticise, but they made a real difference to people's lives. They protected people from becoming homeless. The record and historic budgets that you have secured, not just in the last year, but now in Housing for All. The big difference and the big change in this plan is that there will be multi-annual funding. It is a state-led approach as opposed to a market-led approach to solving the housing crisis. And it's all underpinned not by fanciful electioneering leaflets or videos. It's actually underpinned by legislation and by government policy. And it says to all of government, not just the Housing Department, but to all of government at a national and a local level, that this government is absolutely committed to addressing the housing crisis, to eradicating homelessness, to ensuring that everybody in our society has access to a secure and affordable home. And we're going to do that by increasing supply, ensuring affordability, by using the state's assets. And the most valuable asset we have is our land and our human resource available to us in our local authorities. Your legislation, your affordable housing bill, the most comprehensive housing bill, there's those who like to talk about a very narrow section of that bill, which is a vital financial support to people who are paying more for rent than they would do and should do to own their own home through a mortgage. But the big game changer in the affordable housing bill is the fact that we're empowering local authorities. Affordable housing that was abolished back in 2011. Affordable housing now will be provided by local authorities and approved housing bodies, not just in the city, but in every county in our country. So it is hugely important, and it is by supporting and resourcing the local authorities and the approved housing bodies that we will achieve your targets of 300,000 new homes, 54,000 affordable homes, 90,000 new social homes. That'll be an average of 33,000 homes per year by the time we get to 2024. It will all only be achieved because the legislation will underpin it, the policies will underpin it, but the funding will be there as well. And I want to commend you, Minister, because I know you have your detractors, but I think it's also, you should be encouraged to know that very serious organisations that are dedicated to helping those at the most acute end of our housing crisis, people like the Simon community, people like the social housing and the approved housing bodies, they have commended you and they have backed your plan because they know that it is a plan that differs from previous plans, that it does have the legislation and the multi-annual funding to actually deliver. There's a few areas, and I think, I was talking to somebody earlier about it, and I think while the plan now sets the direction and the tone and will ensure that the state's resources are all going in the right direction, I think, and you know this, Minister, that there's a number of areas, and we're already working on them through the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Housing, that we want to see progressed. And some of them obviously will fall to the Minister for Finance, and they will be budgetary issues. So I'm just going to run through a few of them. In terms of homelessness, it was a historic homeless budget, 220 million last year, and the fact that Housing for All calls out the fact that it will be a housing-first approach, and a continuation and resourcing of preventions for homelessness by increasing the housing supply by delivering 90,000 new social homes, really important. But in the short term, we've done it in Dublin, an increase in the HAP, the homeless HAP. That is something, it's an operational, it's an annual budget issue, and I believe, and we've raised it at the Joint Oireachtas Committee, that the homeless HAP facility that has been in place in Dublin City needs potentially to be extended to other local authorities. The lease and repair scheme, which your department funds, is hugely powerful in terms of taking vacant housing stock and actually having it repaired and then leased for social housing. There is no faster way to increase the housing stock than to address the dereliction and the vacancy, and you know this, Minister. So the lease and repair, and also where your department funds local authorities to purchase homes that are actually going to be sold, that's really important. Your banning of co-living sent a really strong message that we believe that people deserve an adequate form of housing, and that this government is absolutely committed to ensuring that. I think the fact that you've capped rents at inflation gives a lot of reassurance to renters, and the fact that we're actually going to deliver affordable cost rental. You've already started to, the first tenants have moved in, but legislating for that, creating a scheme for it, funding it. Affordable cost rental is a game changer for people. The student accommodation crisis that has been spoken about, Minister, you yourself have directed the local authorities not to change the planning permissions where it has been granted for student accommodation. But Minister, there is also a financial way to stop that behaviour. It's not within your remit, but I urge you to take this up with the Minister for Finance. Any purpose-built student accommodation that was built got a tax break based on the fact that it would provide accommodation to students from absolutely named educational institutions. If any of those operators wish to change from now being student accommodation, they need to be aware that the tax treatment that they enjoyed will not apply and will not travel. And that is a matter for the Minister for Finance and Revenue, and Minister, I urge you to take that up with them. In terms of the planning process, the ending of the SHD and the introduction of your large-scale residential, that is a really important game changer because it restores the democratic process at a local level. Look, you're being very generous with your time and I appreciate it. I just want to say to you, Minister, that this House and all members of the government parties are absolutely committed to realising the change and the vision that is being projected in your Housing for All. We need to make this change for generations to come, and you have our full support. Gurmagad.